psychology for the past 10 years. I currently work at the Monash University Medical Unit and work with cases involving mental disorders.
Dr. Desson, do you believe that Mrs. B suffers from a mental disorder?
Yes, I do.
Can you please tell us a bit about this disorder?
Of course, the disorder that Mrs. B is suffering from is Capgras syndrome. Capgras syndrome is a common type of delusional misidentification syndrome, which is a belief in doubles or duplicates. It is characterized by a delusional belief that someone significant to an individual has been replaced by a lookalike imposter. The individual recognizes a significant person but denies their identity and often uses subtle differences in behavior, personality, or physical appearances to distinguish between them and the imagined imposter. The syndrome is seen in both sexes, but there have been reports of a higher prevalence among women.
How does this disorder relate to the defense of murder?
Studies have shown that there is a modest relation between interpersonal violence and the presence of an active psychotic disorder, with a higher incidence of severe acts of violence and delusional disorders compared with other psychiatric disorders. In a study of schizophrenia in London conducted over 20 years, found that of 718 homicide convictions, 38% involved psychosis, with 6% having a lifetime history of schizophrenia. In another study on 1,432 homicide offenders over a 12-year period, it was found that 93, or 6.5%, suffered from schizophrenia. With this in mind, the calculations of the odds revealed that the risk of committing a homicide was about 10 times greater among men and women with schizophrenia compared to the general population. Numerous reports exist of cases of violent behaviour in Capgras syndrome sufferers. There are a growing number of reports that individuals with CES can pose a significant danger to others.
Do you have any cases to back up your findings?
Yes, I do. The individuals in these case series were men who committed severe acts of violence, including homicide, toward family members. Following a violent act, each man was diagnosed with some form of psychosis, including schizophrenia, paranoid subtype. All four held delusions of misidentification and directed their violent acts towards the misidentified person. For each individual, there was evidence of persistent and long-standing delusional ideas.
This is all well and good, but have you conducted any tests to indicate that Mrs. B actually fits into this category?
Our team has done extensive tests on Mrs. B. We conducted an extensive medical history test, which found that Mrs. B has been involved in a serious car accident 5 years ago, which resulted in a concussion, now believed to be one of the reasons this syndrome has occurred. We have done laboratory tests to rule out drugs, medication, or a general medical condition for the cause of such delusion. Brain imaging or EEG were also viewed. The results showed that she had abnormal anatomical lesions, which are popular with other Capgras syndrome sufferers. We have also had many discussions with Mrs. B about her thought process leading up to the incident. No doubt in my mind that Mrs. B suffers from Capgras syndrome.
It still doesn't explain why Mrs. B killed her husband.
Mrs. B had no control over the way she felt. Capgras syndrome can often cause paranoia. She believed that Mr. B was going to kill her. In her mind, she was using self-defense. It was either her life or his. She chose hers. This belief is common for people with Capgras syndrome.
That is all.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Desson?
Dr. Desson, what do you suggest the outcomes be for Mrs. B?
I suggest that if Mrs. B is found guilty, that she be admitted into a psychiatric institution where she will be given the appropriate care. This would include being prescribed a drug like pimazide, pharmacotherapy, and also has psychotherapy to help with the misidentification.
How effective is this medication in treating the condition?
As there is no cure, if the medication is taken properly, it can reduce the symptoms.
So you're saying that even with medication, Mrs. B will always suffer from Capgras syndrome and therefore continue to be a hazard to society?
No, I do not believe that Mrs. B is a hazard to society. Medication cannot cure Mrs. B, but it can help with the delusions. With the appropriate help, Mrs. B can become just like any other member of society.
That she has killed someone.
Objection! Leading the witness!
Taylor, do you believe that Mrs. B is guilty of murder?
I'm not in the position to answer, but in my opinion, she was not in the right state of mind.
Is it possible for a person to fake a mental disorder?
I guess it is possible, but considering Mrs. B was admitted into an institution concerning delusions before the incident occurred, and the extensive tests that my team have done on Mrs. B, it is highly unlikely.
It's still possible.
I guess, but I doubt in this situation.
No further questions, Your Honour.
Thank you, Dr. Desson. You may step down.
Thank
Tell me the duck story.
Bum bum bum, ba-dum ba-dum. A duck walked up to a lemonade stand and he said to the man, run in the stand. Hey, bum bum bum, got any grapes?
Do you have any cases?
The man said no, we just sell lemonade. But it's fresh and it's all homemade.